The world is not run by the smartest people in it. It never has been. And the reason is not corruption. It is not luck. It is not nepotism. It is a design flaw built into intelligence itself, a flaw that fools learned to exploit 500 years ago, and that intelligent men have been too proud to admit ever since. Speed is not a talent. It is a side effect of not knowing enough to hesitate, and hesitation, in the architecture of power, is the most expensive thing an intelligent man will ever own. Every man alive has felt this without being able to name it. Turn on the news in any country. Watch the people making decisions that affect millions of lives. Listen to them speak. And there is a moment. It happens almost every time where an intelligent man watching thinks, "This person does not seem to understand what they are talking about. How are they in that seat?" This is not about one leader, one party, one nation. This is every nation, every era, every civilization that has ever organized itself into a hierarchy. The people at the top rarely seem to match the weight of the position they hold, and the men watching from below assume this is a malfunction, that the system is broken, that something went wrong. Nothing went wrong. The system is performing exactly as it was built to perform. The seats of power are not filled by the most capable people. They are filled by a specific type of person, and the architecture that selects that type is 5 centuries old, fully operational, and invisible to every intelligent man it was designed to exclude. There is a word for this, not a psychology term, not a framework from a textbook. A word that Machiavelli used in 1513, after watching the most brilliant minds in Italy get systematically outmaneuvered by men he privately described as mediocre. The word is decisione, and he did not use it as a compliment. He used it as a diagnosis. Decisiveness is not a product of knowledge, it is a product of its absence. The man who cannot see the cliff walks toward it with a confidence that the man who mapped every inch of the terrain will never possess. And in the gap between seeing the cliff and walking toward it, the fool has already crossed the bridge that the intelligent man is still inspecting for cracks. This is not ancient history. This is Monday morning. An intelligent man sits in a meeting. A decision needs to be made. He has the best analysis in the room. He sees risks nobody else sees. He maps every consequence, every failure point, every reason the proposed direction is flawed. And while he is building that perfect map inside his head, while every gear of his intelligence is turning, processing, refining, someone who sees none of those risks raises a hand and says yes, confidently, immediately, without a pause, and the room follows. Not because the fool is right, not because his idea is better, but because certainty, in the language of power, sounds identical to competence, and the room does not have time to tell the difference. The room reads body language, voice, speed of response. The room reads confidence, and the fool's confidence is not a performance. That is what makes this so devastating. The fool is not pretending to be certain. He is certain. His certainty is real because it is built on a foundation of genuine ignorance. He does not know what will go wrong, so his body does not carry the micro signals of doubt. His voice does not waver. His eye contact does not break. The intelligent man's body, the body of the man who sees every risk, broadcasts hesitation in frequencies he cannot control. The slight pause before he speaks, the qualifier he adds to every statement, the way his eyes shift when he is calculating whether his idea is airtight. Every one of those signals tells the room the same thing. This man is not sure. And the man who is not sure loses to the man who is wrong but does not know it, every single time. A woman who reads social dynamics, and most women have been reading them since childhood, with a fluency most men never develop, spots this difference in less than 3 seconds. She does not know the neurological explanation. She does not need one. She reads the body, and the fool's body says power. The intelligent man's body says processing. And in the brutal economy of first impressions, processing is just a polite word for weakness. Sit with that for a second. Now, here is where this gets architectural. Because that meeting, that moment where the fool speaks first and the room follows, is not a random event. It is the output of a system. A system with 4 gears that run inside every intelligent mind, without permission, without awareness, producing paralysis while fools walk past and take the seats that intelligence built but never occupied. The first gear has no name in any textbook, so let us give it one. Call it the curse of consequence mapping. When a decision appears in front of an intelligent man, his brain does not see a decision, it sees a tree. Every option branches into outcomes. Every outcome branches into consequences. Every consequence carries a probability that his intelligence insists on calculating before the first branch is selected. The system calls this critical thinking. In a classroom, it is a superpower. In the real world, it is a cage with a degree hanging on the wall. Because while the intelligent man is mapping the 17th consequence of saying yes, the fool has already said yes, shaken hands, started building, failed twice, adjusted, and produced a result. An ugly result. An imperfect result. A result that the intelligent man's analysis would have predicted would fail, but the result exists, and the analysis does not. And the world, the actual functioning world of careers and money and power, does not pay for analysis. It pays for results. There is a specific rage that intelligent men carry when they watch this happen. It is not jealousy, it is something colder. It is the rage of the architect who designed a cathedral, watching a man with no blueprints build a shack on the same plot of land and get praised for his initiative. The shack is ugly. The shack is unstable. The shack will need repairs within a year. But the shack exists, and the cathedral is still a drawing on a desk at 2 in the morning. Remember that. In 1502, Machiavelli watched Cesare Borgia conquer Romagna, an entire region of Italy, not through superior strategy, but through superior speed. Borgia moved while his enemies deliberated. He was at the city gates while the most brilliant military minds in Italy were still drafting counter-proposals in rooms that smelled of ink and indecision. Borgia was not the most intelligent man in Italy. He was the fastest. And Machiavelli, one of the most intelligent men of his era, wrote about Borgia not with contempt, but with something closer to awe. He calls it integrity. The world calls it irrelevance. The second gear is worse, because the system built this one on purpose. Call it the trap of legitimate channels. Before the age of 10, every intelligent man is taught the rules. Raise a hand, wait a turn, submit the application, follow the process. Let the merit speak for itself. And he believes it. Not because he is naive, because he is intelligent enough to see that the system has a logic to it. And intelligent men respect logic. They were counting on that. A man who believes in legitimate channels is a man who will never kick down a door. He will stand in the queue, growing more frustrated, more bitter, more convinced that the system is broken, but he will never leave the queue. And the queue is not a path to power. The queue is the control mechanism. The people who designed it are not standing in it. The fool does not believe in the queue, not because he has seen through the design, he has not. He ignores the queue because he does not have the patience or the analytical capacity to understand why it exists. So he walks past it, knocks on the door, introduces himself to the person in charge, asks for things he has not earned, in rooms he was not invited to, with a certainty that makes the people inside assume he belongs there. And here is the part that burns. It works. Every time. It works because the gatekeepers, the decision makers, the ones with actual power, are drowning in legitimate channel submissions. Every intelligent, qualified person sent the same polished application through the same approved process. They all blend together, indistinguishable. And then the fool walks in the side door with a handshake and a bad idea delivered with total certainty, and he is the only person in the room who does not look like everyone else in the pile. The gatekeepers do not choose him because he is better. They choose him because he is different, and the only reason he is different is that he skipped the system the intelligent man was too smart to ignore. But there is a darker reason underneath that one. And this is the part that explains why the pattern repeats in every organization, every government, every institution on Earth. An intelligent subordinate is a threat. A man who sees the full architecture of a system is a man who can dismantle it. He asks difficult questions. He notices inefficiencies the gatekeeper benefits from. He sees through the politics. And most dangerously, he has the capacity to do the gatekeeper's job. Every gatekeeper knows this. It is the first thing a gatekeeper assesses in any candidate, not whether this person is competent, but whether this person is dangerous. The fool is safe. He does not ask difficult questions because he does not see the questions. He does not notice inefficiencies because he does not understand the system well enough to identify them. He does not threaten the gatekeeper's position because he does not have the capacity to occupy it. And he is grateful, visibly, reliably, endlessly grateful for the opportunity. Gratitude is the fool's most valuable currency. It is the one thing the intelligent man is too proud to offer, and the one thing the gatekeeper values above competence. Remember the leaders on the news, the ones who do not seem to match the weight of the seat. They were not selected despite their limitations. They were selected because of them. A fool in a position of power is a gatekeeper's most reliable asset, loyal, manageable, and permanently dependent on the person who placed him there. The system does not malfunction when it puts a fool in charge. The system completes its primary task, protecting the gatekeeper. The Medici did not return to power in Florence because they were the smartest family in the city. They returned because Cosimo understood that power flows through relationships, not channels. The greatest political minds in Renaissance Florence wrote treatises about governance that are still studied in universities today, and a banker's family outmaneuvered all of them by throwing better parties. The third gear cuts the deepest, because intelligent men experience it every day and have never had a name for it. Call it the intelligence tax. Here is how it works. The smarter a man is, the higher his standards for action. The more he knows, the more he understands how much can go wrong. The more he understands how much can go wrong, the higher the threshold of certainty he requires before he moves. And that threshold, that ever-rising bar of how sure he needs to be, is not wisdom. It is a prison that intelligence builds for itself, brick by brick, every time a new piece of knowledge arrives. Every book raises the bar. Every case study raises the bar. Every failure observed raises the bar. And the bar never comes down, it only goes up. Until the threshold is so high that nothing, no opportunity, no relationship, no risk, no reward clears it, and the intelligent man sits there, perfectly informed, perfectly prepared, perfectly still. The fool has no bar. His threshold is on the ground. Want it? Take it. Interested? Start. His relationship with action is direct, unfiltered, immediate. He ships a bad idea today while the intelligent man polishes a perfect idea that nobody will see until next quarter. And by next quarter, the bad idea has been tested, iterated, failed, recovered, and improved, while the perfect idea is still being refined in a mind that cannot stop finding flaws in it. Done badly beats planned perfectly, every single day. That is not a motivational quote. That is the operating system of every power structure that has ever existed. Intelligent men know this. They know it in their bodies. The project that was almost ready, the business idea that needed one more month of research, the conversation that kept getting postponed because the timing was not right, the words were not perfect, the conditions were not ideal. And while the intelligent man waited for ideal, someone with worse timing and worse words and worse conditions walked in and did the thing he had been preparing to do, badly, clumsily, without half the understanding. And it worked. Let that land. The fourth gear is the cruelest. It is the one that turns intelligence against itself in the most personal way possible. Call it the competence illusion. Intelligent men believe with every fiber of their being that competence is visible, that if a man is good enough, skilled enough, knowledgeable enough, the world will notice. That quality radiates, that excellence announces itself, that the cream rises. The cream does not rise. The cream sits at the bottom of the container, being cream, while the oil floats to the surface, because oil is lighter, not better. Lighter, less substance, less depth, less weight. And from the surface where every decision maker is looking, the oil is all anyone can see. Fools float because they carry less doubt, less nuance, less self-awareness, less honest assessment of their own limitations. And that lightness, that unburdened, unexamined relationship with their own abilities is what makes them visible. They are not more competent, they are more buoyant. The intelligent man sits at the bottom, weighed down by everything he knows. He knows his gaps. He knows the distance between what he has achieved and what is possible. And that honest, accurate, intelligent assessment of his own position reads to the world as a lack of confidence, as uncertainty, as not ready. Meanwhile, the fool walks into the interview, the pitch, the negotiation, and presents himself as exactly what the situation requires, not because he is, because he genuinely believes he is. And belief, when it is total and unreserved, is indistinguishable from truth to every nervous system in the room. There is a moment that happens in every intelligent man's career that nobody talks about. A promotion is announced, a project lead is chosen, a name is called, and it is not his. And in the second before the professional smile arrives, something crosses his face. Not anger, something quieter. The realization that the game he thought he was playing, the one where the best work wins, does not exist. It never existed. The game was always about who occupied the space first with enough certainty to make the room believe the space was theirs. And the man whose name was not called goes back to his desk, and he works harder. Because that is what intelligent men do when the system fails them. They assume the system will correct itself if they produce better work. It will not. The system does not self-correct. The system rewards occupation, and the desk is not a seat of power. The desk is the cue. Sit with that for a second. Now here is the part they left out. The 4 gears explain why fools rise. But they do not explain why intelligent men stay trapped after they see the pattern. That requires understanding 3 stages, and these stages are more dangerous than any fool because they feel like progress when they are actually a deeper kind of paralysis. Stage 1 is observation. An intelligent man watches the fool succeed. He feels a sharp, specific disbelief. This is not right. The world should not work like this. This person is not qualified. This stage feels like moral clarity. It feels like sanity in an insane world. And that feeling, that righteous, comforting feeling of being the one who sees the truth, is the first link in the chain. Because the feeling of being above the game is the feeling of being outside it. And being outside the game is not a position of power. It is a position of irrelevance with a pleasant view. Stage 2 is resentment. The observation hardens into contempt. The intelligent man stops trying as hard. He withdraws his best ideas. He tells himself, and this is the critical lie, that the system does not deserve his intelligence, that participating fully would be degrading, that holding back is dignity. It is not dignity. It is surrender wrapped in pride, so he does not have to feel the humiliation. And the system does not notice. The system does not care that a brilliant man is holding back. It fills the space he left with whoever is willing to occupy it. Usually a fool. And the fool does not even know the space was his. Stage 3 is mythology. This is where intelligent men die without anyone noticing, including themselves. In stage 3, a man constructs a narrative. He is the unrecognized genius, the misunderstood visionary, the man who would be running things if the world valued what it should value. This narrative is seductive because it is partially true. The world should value depth. It should reward intelligence. It should recognize competence. But should is not a strategy. Should is the sound intelligent men make while fools are signing the contract. And the mythology feeds itself. The intelligent man curates evidence. He collects examples of fools failing and ignores the ones who succeed. He remembers every injustice and forgets every opportunity he declined because it did not meet his standards. He builds a courtroom in his mind where the world is on trial and he is the only honest witness. But nobody is listening. The verdict will never be delivered because the trial was never real. It was theater, and the only audience member is himself. And the mythology, the story a man builds about why his position makes sense, is the exact mechanism that prevents him from adapting, because adapting would require admitting that the game is not what he was told it was. And admitting that would mean everything he studied, everything he sacrificed, everything he did to develop his intelligence was preparation for a game that does not exist. That admission is so painful that most intelligent men will choose the mythology for the rest of their lives rather than face it. They will die unrecognized geniuses, comfortably bitter, correctly diagnosed, perfectly still. Here is the architecture underneath all 4 gears and all 3 stages. Intelligence, left unmanaged, converts potential into delay. It takes every opportunity, every idea, every impulse toward action and filters it through a system so thorough that by the time anything emerges from the other end, it has been perfected into something that is too late. The fool has no filter. He is all impulse, all movement, all action, and his actions are bad. His decisions are flawed. His strategies are non-existent. But his results are real, because results are not produced by intelligence. Results are produced by movement, and the fool moves while the intelligent man filters. Machiavelli spent the last years of his life understanding this in the most personal way possible, tortured, exiled, impoverished. The most brilliant political mind of his century, writing letters from a farmhouse while men, with 1/10 of his understanding, sat in the seats he had earned. And he knew with a clarity that still cuts 500 years later that his intelligence was not the reason he was in that farmhouse. His relationship with his intelligence was. He let it make him wait. He let it convince him that the legitimate channels would eventually recognize his value. They never did. Now, here is where this becomes something that belongs to you. The 4 gears are not character flaws. They are software. Automatic patterns that run without your permission. And like any software, they can be overridden, not eliminated. Intelligence is not something to cure, but the paralysis that intelligence produces, the hesitation, the overthinking, the waiting for conditions that will never arrive, that can be interrupted. The interruption is so simple that intelligent men resist it, because simplicity feels beneath them. And that resistance, that refusal to accept a simple answer, is the 5th gear, the silent one. The interruption is this: act before the analysis is complete, not instead of analysis. Before. Ship the draft before it is polished. Send the message before the wording is perfect. Walk into the room before you feel ready. Speak before the thought is fully formed. Start the project before the plan is finished. This will feel reckless. It will feel like everything you were trained to avoid. Good. That discomfort, that voice telling you to wait, to prepare more, to be certain before you move, is the sound of the cage recognizing that you are walking out of it. The fool does not hear that voice. That is his advantage. You hear it, and you have the intelligence to recognize it for what it is. Not wisdom, not quality control. A paralysis algorithm installed when you were young and obedient, and believed that following the rules was the same thing as winning. It was never the same thing. The rules were never the path. The rules were the containment system. And the moment you understand that the cue was designed to keep you in it, not to move you forward, is the moment your intelligence stops being a cage and starts being what it was supposed to be. A weapon. Not the fool's weapon, blind certainty, ignorant action. A sharper one. The weapon of the man who sees every risk the fool cannot see and moves anyway. The man who maps every consequence and chooses the highest payoff instead of being paralyzed by the highest risk. The man who understands the legitimate channels and decides with full awareness which ones to bypass. The man who pays the intelligence tax and negotiates a lower rate by setting his own threshold for action instead of letting his standards set it for him. That man is the most dangerous person in any room, because a fool succeeds by accident. An intelligent man who has broken the paralysis succeeds by design. And the difference between accidental success and designed success is the difference between a man who stumbles into a room and a man who owns the building. A woman who watches these 2 types of men operate will say something most men will never hear because they never ask. She will say that confidence without depth is attractive for about 15 minutes, and depth without movement is invisible forever. The man who combines both, the one who carries the weight of real knowledge but moves like he, carries nothing. That man does not compete. He arrives. And when he arrives, the fools in the room feel it before they understand it. Something has shifted. The air is different. The dynamic has changed, and they do not know why. That is the weapon Machiavelli spent his life trying to describe, and his life failing to use. He saw the architecture, he named every gear, he diagnosed every stage, and he refused to act on his own diagnosis, because his intelligence kept whispering that acting imperfectly was beneath him. He died in 1527, broke, forgotten. The most dangerous mind of his century, undone not by any fool but by his own refusal to move at the speed of one. So, the question is not whether this is true. The question is, which stage has been keeping you still? Observation, watching the fools and shaking your head, collecting evidence for a case nobody asked you to build. Resentment, withdrawing your best because the system does not deserve it, punishing a world that does not notice the punishment. Mythology, telling yourself a story about the genius the world was not ready for, decorating the cage so beautifully that it almost feels like a choice. Type observation, resentment, or mythology in the comments. If you are being honest, and honesty is the only thing that has ever broken a cage, you already know which one fits. And if a name came to mind while listening to this, a specific fool sitting in a specific seat that intelligence built but hesitation never occupied, that is not jealousy. That is the architecture showing you the exact door it has been keeping you from. The man who admits he is in the cage has already started walking out of it, and the man who pretends the cage is a throne will still be sitting there when the next fool walks past and takes the last seat. Your intelligence was never the problem. Your intelligence is the weapon. You just have not drawn it yet. If this landed, if something in the last 30 minutes made the architecture visible for the first time, subscribe. Not for motivation, not for comfort. This channel exists to show you the systems they hid and hand you the tools to dismantle them. Every video is a piece of the architecture. Miss one, and the blind spot remains. If you have not watched the 7 levels of intelligence, that is where this conversation goes next. This video showed you why intelligence becomes a cage. That one shows you the 7 levels, and most men are trapped on level 2 without knowing the levels above them exist. This is your cold awakening.